Okay.
Welcome everybody to our weekly seminar series here at the Department of Marine Geosciences. And today we're crossing the Atlantic Ocean to host Dr. Karina Lecomte from the University of Córdoba in Argentina. Some words about Karina. Thank you very much, Karina, for coming. So Karina is a geologist and doctor in geology sciences from the National University of Córdoba in 2006. She is a researcher at the National Scientific and Technical Research Council, which is the CONCET, and professor at the National University of Córdoba. She works at the Center for Research in Earth Sciences, which is CITERRA in Spanish. Her career has been dedicated to understanding the geochemical processes that shape Earth's surface environment. Dr. Lecomte has become a specialist in environmental geochemistry and hydrogeochemistry. Her research focuses on the hydrochemical dynamics of terrestrial systems, ranging from mountain rivers and perglacial environments to the clustering systems in extreme settings such as Antarctica. She employs a multidisciplinary approach that integrates field sampling, advanced laboratory analysis, and geochemical modeling using tools like PHREEQC to unravel the complex interactions between water, rocks, and sediments. A significant part of her work involves studying weathering processes, acid mine drainage systems, and the natural and anthropogenic factors influencing water quality. Dr. Lecomte has international experiences, having conducted research in Spain, Brazil, Mexico, and some campaigns in Antarctica, where she investigated pristine acoustic systems on James Ross and Deception Island. She has authored and co-authored over 40 peer-reviewed publications in prestigious international journals, contributed to book chapters, and co-edited special issues of environmental geochemistry. Dr. Lecomte is also an actively scientist involved in scientific dissemination, promoting the understanding of earth sciences among diverse audiences. So in her talk today, from field sampling to geochemical modeling, hydrochemical journeys to earth systems, she will share insight for her research, illustrating how field observation analytical techniques and computational models come together to decode stories written in Earth's waters. So with this word, Karina, thank you again, and I leave you the podium for the talk. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning for me and good afternoon for you. I'm in the other part of the world. First of all, I want to thank Nicolas for the presentation and Nicolas and the University of Haifa for the invitation for this seminar. I am going to talk about the tracing environmental processes, the hydrochemical tools from the Antarctic to the computer. First, a quick presentation. I'm here in the other part of the world, as I told you, in Argentina. In the middle of Argentina, there is a province called Córdoba, where I work at CITERRA, the Earth Science Research Center, which belongs to both National University of Córdoba and CONICET. CONICET is the biggest research center of Argentina. And here we work with, we are almost 125, including research people, a fellowship that are doing the PhD, and some technicians. The lines of research are grouped in three biggest lines. The first one is the lithosphere asthenosphere dynamics, which studies the farthest part of the Earth. It is composed mainly by geologists, by some physicists also. The second group is the evolution of biological diversity, which the person who study this line are paleontologists, biologists, and geologists also. And finally, the third group, the hydroclimatic variability and environmental processes, is the most miscellaneous line, and here is where I make my work. Within this line, I study the hydrochemistry and geochemical processes of multiple hydrological basins throughout Argentine and the Antarctica. Here, I show you some examples of the system that I studied. This is a Patagonian hydrological basin where a student of mine made her PhD in the Manso River. Then we study also another mountainous rivers in Córdoba province, in the hills. This is a topic that I like, the acid mine drainage. I had two students also made the PhDs in this topic. And finally, the lakes, that there are some studies making their thesis also here in the Pampean lakes, in Córdoba and also in San Luis provinces. And I compared these processes in these latitudes to those of the Antarctic lakes. But why to study natural waters? Water systems have, as you know, socioeconomic importances. It provides drinking water, our tourist and recreational areas, but also the waters transmit disease and transport toxic elements and compounds. So the study of the hydrochemistry is very important because it reflects the water-rock interaction, the climate signals, the environmental change, and the human perturbation. So analyzing the factors that influence in the dissolvent particular elements, we can share the results. The factors are the temporal dynamics, the environmental aspect, and geological factors that influence in the dissolvent particulate elements. And we study them by statistical tools and geochemical modeling. The variables which we most study are the dissolved major trace elements and rare earth elements and some isotopes. And in this talk, I'm going to talk about major and trace elements. There is a concept that is important to take into account, that is the critical zone defined by Brantley et al. In 2007. The critical zone includes from the lowermost groundwater to the atmosphere that meets the Earth. It is the zone where the lithosphere intersects with the biosphere, the hydrosphere, and the atmosphere. In this zone is where all the processes take into account the hydrological processes, chemical, biological, physical, and geological processes. And within these processes are the weathering processes where I studied. This zone is analyzed and investigated with several different fields. The weathering the weathering processes are compiled here in this book. With I am an author. I am with the Petri and Pasquini, and this compilation talk about the different weathering processes, the factors controlling that, and the residual components. I will make briefly a summary about it. The beginning of the continental denudation is made by the mechanical or physical weathering. That is because the salt weathering or the ice, the salt grows and the ice grows will break apart the rocks, and also the thermal differences, and this breaking will make that the superficial of the rock, the surface of the rock that is susceptible for weathering will increase. That's why it's the beginning of the continental denudation. Then the biological weathering can be physical weathering, for example, as the rock grows, or chemical weathering, for example, as redox reactions. These biological processes are important to take into account in the analysis because they enhance the abiotic processes. And finally, the chemical weathering, which are divided into two biggest groups, the hydrate processes, which include the salt dissolution and precipitation, the hydration, and the carbonation. The carbonation makes the known casting case. And the second group are the, sorry, the low rate processes, which includes principally the silicate hydrolysis. Here you have an example of an incongruent dissolution of a feldspar. It calls incongruent dissolution because the mineral doesn't dissolve completely, as it remains a solid phase, in this case, a kaolinite. The solid phase is always a clay. And finally, redox processes, which generates, for example, the acid drainage, the acid mine drainage, and the exchangeable ions. In this figure, there is an example of a mineral, which can be a clay mineral, that depending on the physical of the solution and the pH, for example, in this example, the surface presents a negative charge, so the cations can be absorbed onto the surface. Well, let's go to our case study, the geochemical processes in Antarctic lake system. Antarctica is a unique laboratory where a lot of scientific may make the investigations. It's unique because of two significant characteristics. First of all, its extreme climate that governs in these regions present rapid responses to environmental change. In this region, it presents the records of the increasing temperature. The Antarctic Peninsula, for example, have increased 3 degrees Celsius since the last mid-century. The other characteristic is that it has low human influence, so it makes this part one of the only parts of the world where we can assume that the hydrological processes are pristine. And that allows us to define the natural geochemical baseline level, which is very important in order to see the global changes. The Antarctic Peninsula is the southernmost part of Argentina, where the freshwater systems are typically developed during the austral summer in ice-free areas. During the rest of the year, all the peninsula is frozen, and that makes it impossible to make a seasonal analysis, for example. In the hydrological system, we always made a seasonal analysis, and here we can't. The lake systems were formed by glacial erosion during the Holocene retreat. The study area is in the northern eastern part of the Antarctic Peninsula in the James Ross archipelago. This archipelago is formed by several islands, and the ones we are going to study now are the Vega Island, Marambio Island, and within the James Ross Island, two sectors, Las Lagunitas lake systems and Clearwater Mesa lake systems. Here you have some examples of James Ross lakes, Vega Island lakes, Marambio Island lakes. Here you have the Antarctic base and some lakes. And this is Clearwater Mesa, where it develops more than 60 lakes during the austral summer, of course. And some of them, of these lakes are connected by streams. So this lake, we divide it into the system, into the connected lake systems. The climate in this area is semi-arid with short summers that concentrated the annual snowfall, which range between 2,000 and 5,000 millimeters per year, the water equivalent precipitation. Nowadays, due to the warming, this snowfall in the summer is usually rainfall instead of snowfall. The mean menstrual mean month temperature is -3.3 in summer to -14.5 in winter. The lithology of the region is composed mainly by the James Ross volcanic group with alkaline basalts and altered breccias, and some parts are covered by glacial deposits with basaltic clasts. The objective of this talk is to characterize the hydrochemistry of the surface waters, to identify the sources of major and minor solutes, to characterize geochemical weathering to define the evolution of Antarctic lake environments, and finally to establish the baseline data for monitoring and tracking both climate change and anthropogenic pollutants. And the result of this work will explain the dominant weathering regimes that have taken place in the last glacial maximums and provide data, including trace elements that is not common in these places, which can be used for comparison with other latitudes, with other regions of Antarctica, and also to comparison over time. The field work is like this. It depends on the island. At Marambio Island, we stay at the Antarctic base, but the other islands, we make camping. Within the field, we made some measurements in situ at the water samples. We measure the pH, alkalinity, electrical conductivity, temperature, and redox potential. Then each sample is filtered by 0.22 micrometer per size, and the aliquots are stored frozen or very cold to the determination in laboratory. An ion determination is made by ion chromatography, whereas cation and trace elements is made by ICP-MS. Here you have some photographs of different lakes, and you can already observe that each one is unique and has different characteristics, different to the others. So, in Vega Island and James Ross Island, the waters are classified as freshwater, as they present less than 500 millimeters per liter of total dissolved solid. Whereas those lakes from Marambio Islands are subsaline with total dissolved solids between 500 and 3,000 milligrams per liter. Taking into account the pH, the water from Las Lagunitas in James Ross Islands are circumneutral, whereas those lakes from the other sector of James Ross and Vega Island are alkaline with pH ranges in between 8.5 and 10. This pH, this high pH, alkaline pH, is a result of the photosynthesis processes that make the microorganisms alive. Finally, in Marambio Island, the lakes present a change. In the first sampling in 2012, the lakes were circumneutral and highly charged, whereas since the 2020, they became acid. We consider that the warming makes that the permafrost melting, the area of the permafrost that was not an active layer in the years before, nowadays it is melting and apporting acid drainage to these lakes. Here the classification about Piper tell us in a visually way, it separates the lakes according to the major chemistry. In the right triangle, there is the anions, whereas in the left triangles, there are the cations. Marambio lakes, which are the dark gray circles, are of the sulfite type with no cation dominance, whereas Clearwater Mesa, divided into the systems, and Vega Island in red are of the chloride sodium potassium type. This type of waters is the most common worldwide in the lakes, including some lakes analyzed by other authors in McMurdo Valley, for example. Finally, Las Lagunitas from James Ross Island present a bicarbonate no dominant type, differentiated from the others. In this Schuyler diagram, it is represented the absolute concentration. And here we can corroborate that Marambio Island presents the highest one, except for the bicarbonate ions. The other systems from Clearwater Mesa present a similar distribution and differentiating between the systems. Analyzing the hydrochemical processes, the Gibbs diagram represents the mechanisms responsible for controlling the chemical composition of the water bodies. In this case, we can see that Marambio Island, this orange, is plotted over the evaporation line processes, whereas the Las Lagunitas is between the dilution and the weathering processes, and Clearwater Mesa and Vega Islands, the processes that is more important in those sectors are the weathering processes. Here you have an example of the variability during summer. As we cannot make a seasonal analysis, we just make a temporal analysis. So we took a sample of the Anonymous Lake in James Ross Island during January and then during February, where we could see that the perimeter was 20% smaller than in January. That could be because of evaporation processes or infiltration ones. But analyzing the dissolved chemistry, we could see that most of the ions were more concentrated in the second sampling period, corroborating the evaporation processes. The exception were some ions that correspond to the salt precipitation. In order to give statistical significance to this difference between the lakes, where we make a statistical modeling, particularly a factor analysis. We, in the first approach, this graph shows the results of a factor analysis made by Marambio Island and Clearwater Mesa. It is clear that they are separated. Marambio Island with the highest concentration, and within the Clearwater Mesa, it seems that they are all very similar. So we make another factor analysis with only the Clearwater Mesa lakes. And here the results show that the lakes are separated within, depending on the geographical location. In this figure or photograph, we can see that the geographical location corroborating the statistical analysis. The statistical analysis separated like this: the foreland lakes, the coastal lakes, and the inland lakes. Then we made an analysis of the atmospheric sources, including sea spray or marine spray and the precipitation, with several rates and relation about the major ions. We could see that the foreland, that the coastal lakes present the maximum relations, and the foreland lakes present the minimum ones. That's why. That's because they are protected from the sea influence. They present great distance to the sea, and they are behind geomorphological barriers that it is marked here with this line. So these results indicate that the coastal lakes present higher atmospheric sources than the foreland, and the inland present intermediate values between each other. Moreover, within these lakes that I told you that there are interconnected systems, we analyzed the spatial variation in one of the biggest systems, including this biggest lake. And we found that the concentration and the pH increased from the external lake to the internal lakes. That's evidence that there are weathering processes taken into account occurring in that place. In order to analyze the trace element distribution, we normalize its concentration to the upper continental crust. This upper continental crust is the most common pattern used in this normalization spidergram distribution. But as it is the upper continental crust is more acid than the regional basalts, we include here an average of the basalts in the region. We also include a world average dissolved concentration. As a first approach, they seem to have a very similar distribution, which is made because of the more labile cations, which presents the most concentrated dissolved elements. They are more stable in the solid phase than in the opposite. They are more stable in the dissolved phase than in the solid phase. On the other hand, the metals that presents the lower concentration, which are more depleted, most of them are of the high field strength elements, which present a smaller radius and charge and high charge, with what makes them more stable in the solid phase as the boundary are stronger. That's the first order of this distribution. Then we have that lithology have some elements that are enriched, and these elements are also in the dissolved solution. And finally, lead and zinc present an enrichment, which are both sources, which present both sources, the rock weathering and the atmospheric contamination that it was established by other authors in the region. Finally, we made some geochemical modeling. In this case, we determined the mineral saturation index of Clearwater Mesa lakes. And the results show that most of calcium and manganese carbonates are oversaturated. That means that they are prone to precipitate. And this was corroborated by an X-ray diffraction made in salt sediments, where we can see that both calcite and thenardite are precipitated. And the last modeling that we made were two inverse modeling that I will show you in order to quantify the weathering reaction. The results, as you can see here, is the quantification of these weathering processes. Most of them, we can say, in this example, the modeling was made by first lake, which was the initial solution, which presents lower concentration, connected to a second lake downstream, which presents higher concentration. And the processes that give rise to this final solution are the dissolution of some salts, dolomite, halite, and gypsum, and also the hydrolysis of some silicates as albite, potassium feldspar, and muscovite, with the corresponding precipitation of the clay mineral. In this case, the clay is alite in these quantities. The hydrolysis of silicates also present the consumption of CO2, which is very important to quantify these processes nowadays due to the warming and climate change. The other modeling done was between a glacier and the lake that is in contact with it. In this case, it was also quantifying the processes. Besides, the quantities are much lower than the before example. Here we have also the dissolution of some salts, and the at the lower, lesser extent, the hydrolysis of silicates with the corresponding precipitation of clay. In this case, it is a kaolinite, and the consumption of CO2. And now I'm going to read the conclusions. We can say that the geochemical dynamics of Antarctic lakes are divided into high rate processes, which include temporal evolution, salt mineral precipitation and dissolution, evaporation processes, atmospheric input, and glacier and permafrost melting. And we also have low rate processes, which include the mineral weathering, which influences more in the high Phillips strength elements, and the CO2 consumption. We can say that each water system exhibits geochemical processes that are dependent on its sources, geology, climate, and geomorphology. And finally, concluding each system particularly, we can say that Gem Ross and Vega Island present diluted and alkaline waters. The processes are mainly in the region are low rate processes, weathering the outcropping rocks, but there are also atmospheric sources, and they present temporal and spatial variation. Whereas in Marambio Island, there is a change in the condition over time, particularly from neutral to acid waters, although they are highly concentrated water all over the time, and the main processes are high rate processes in this island. Well, I want to thank you, and I hope you enjoy this presentation. I'm here for a question I will take out to see you.
Thank you. It was very enlightening, especially that we don't have such good knowledge about Antarctic Peninsula and Antarctica in general, so it was really enlightening. And I opened the podium for questions from the audience, and feel free to just go and ask. Don't be shy.
I will drink a mate meantime.
Really. I have a question. You showed a picture from above in which you can see a small peninsula with several lakes, right? In which you divide into coastal, inland, and yeah, all the little island, the little lake, basically.
Yes,
Yeah, I see that there are cliffs. I mean, all
they
the
are.
cliff, cliff in the shoreline.
Ah, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Um, I'm on it. How do you actually get there? I don't see a port. How do you get there?
We get there by helicopter.
Helicopter. Wow.
Yes, we go to the Antarctic base firstly by aeroplane, and then by helicopter to the different islands, to Vega Island and Rosa Island, not by boat.
Because I saw cliff, but I didn't understood how to get there. Do you have also biologists with you that they will, you don't go every week to Antarctica. So I guess when you send an expedition like that, there are other people doing other stuff, like I don't know, biologists searching for whatever they get.
Yes, there are the biologists is the biggest group, the scientific group, because they studied well. Within my Antarctic group, there are many biologists studying the microorganisms that act in the lakes, but there are other biologists studying the penguins and the birds and the biggest organisms. And there are also a lot of paleontologists because in Marambio Island, particularly, there are a lot of sediments that have a lot of fossils. So a great group of paleontologists analyzed that in that place. Not in Saint Rose Marambio, in Saint Rose Island, I don't know if there is any fossil. I think most of paleontologists are in Marambio Island, but the microorganisms are worldwide. So I work with some colleagues, biologists, that they studied the microorganisms and how it interacts with the hydrochemistry. And for example, in Marambio Island, that the lakes have changed from circumneutral to acid pH, the microorganisms have changed also. So we are now studying gas changing over almost 10 years, but we are in that moment, so we don't have a conclusion yet about the microorganisms. But we know that they have changed also.
You also mentioned about anthropogenic impact on the lake, right?
Yes.
How do you see that anthropogenic impact? I mean, because
Well,
they are very far from, human.
in one way, there are some persons and bibliography that talk about the atmospheric pollutant that I mentioned, the lead, for example, and zinc. principally, mostly the lead. And here in the lakes, in the Antarctic lakes, the lead concentration is more increased compared with another lakes. So that's why I thought that not only by the lithology, but also by atmospheric pollutant is the source of the lead. But another way is, for example, these changes in Marambio Island, when we first saw the acidity of the water, one reason could be that in Marambio there are some iron trash, you say, iron trash in the island, old iron trash. So we thought that that could contaminate the water, but after analyzing, we didn't publish it yet. But analyzing the relation and the changes, we realized that it wasn't because of the pollutant, it was because of the melting of the permafrost. But there is a lot of procediments that you have to take into account to not contaminate the Antarctica. So that's why we want to make these lines, baselines, uncontaminated, pristine, in order to then can measure the contamination, the anthropic contamination. Nowadays, it's very little things, but we don't know in the future if it's going to continue like this.
Do you consider taking small core from the lake, cores in general?
There was a group in the first sampling we take cores, but the group who analyzed that didn't publish the results. And the idea was to see if these characteristics are over time, if there were changes in the past or not. But there is a group that is analyzing that, so that's why we couldn't do the same. But maybe someday we took some short course, but in order to measure the microorganisms, and some geochemical aspect, but not everything the geochemistry.
When you do that, you need to take a zodiac and gravity core, I guess. Or how do you do that?
Sorry?
When you did that work, how do you actually physically did the coring? You took a zodiac, like a small boat, a plastic boat?
Yes. I had one photograph, I think. Let's see. We have.
Yes, there was something.
I think here. No. Here, with a boat.
No,
we have the boat here, and we put a core and him.
And then you hammer it.
Yes.
Okay.
And then we collect it.
Okay. No questions from the audience. Well, I hope I really hope that they didn't fall asleep, because it was a very interesting. And well, Karina, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Really.
I hope you enjoy.
Yeah, thank you very much, and have a very good day.
Same to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.